On Monday, I had the privilege to speak at the inaugural session of Congreso Futuro. There, I made the argument that we have a duty of care to children, that we must consider when deploying technology. Nowhere is that more critical than in the classroom. I will address three very practical issues: the growing demand to restrict mobile phones in schools, the use of educational technology in the classroom, and then I will say a little about very, very young children. Much of what I say is critical of both tech sector and the authorities. But let me be clear, I am an early adopter and enthusiastic user of technology. My arguments are about uses and abuses, not about technology itself. The issue of smartphones in schools should be straightforward. School is for learning, for building relationships, for personal development and acquiring skills, sports, drama, debating, and so on. But even a phone sat on a desk diverts attention, because the cognitive resources recruited to inhibit attention to that phone are made unavailable for other tasks. And performance on those tasks will suffer. In the classroom, the performance that suffers is learning. In 2019, nearly half of school children in the UK said that their phone distracted them every day. And evidence from our Department of Education suggested that phones were used in most lessons without permission, distracting pupil, interrupting class, and taking the teacher's attention away from teaching. Now, in algorithmic terms, 2019 is the dark ages. Since then, the addictivity of digital products has been supercharged. Last year, in a court case in the United States, TikTok was forced to disclose that its For You page algorithm is now so powerful that it can addict a new user in less than 35 minutes. So little surprise that emerging evidence finds restricting personal devices at school benefits learning. And it gives a particular benefit for those identified as disadvantaged or struggling academically. And this last point is important because so often restricting phones in schools is characterized as a moral panic of middle-class parents. The evidence says the opposite. And for those who still doubt, it's worth looking at Singapore. In 2020, the Ministry of Education announced it would embrace smartphone use in school, invest in devices for children who could not afford them, and promote wide-ranging digital literacy education and teacher training. But less than 2 years later, Singapore's main newspaper started to report widespread misuse of those devices. One 13-year-old boy had spent more than 3 hours of the school day on apps such as YouTube and TikTok, and just 13 seconds on Google Classroom. He was not alone. Now, Singapore, like other nations, is considering restrictions. Now, I have been really careful not to use the word ban because there are reasons, medical, technical, pastoral, pedagogical, that a school may decide to use a smartphone is in the best interest of a teacher, class, or child. And a ban does not acknowledge that. But that a phone on a desk takes cognitive capacity to resist is really not surprising. Since Pavlov's experiments with dogs, we psychologists have understood that the brain can be trained to respond to small increments of dopamine that fuels a craving to seek out further hits. Children distracted in the classroom are not showing an act of bad faith, nor is it an unforeseen consequence. It simply reflects the priorities of a sector that openly spends billions of research and development dollars hacking human psychology to grab attention. The cost of that attention economy is paid by children with poorer eyesight, interrupted sleep, and rising rates of anxiety and other mental health issues. Smartphone restrictions don't just protect the sanctity of school as places of learning and personal development. They offer children respite from the deliberately orchestrated demands of tech. Which brings me to the broader question of tech in the classroom. It seems that governments have learned little from the harm suffered by children as tech came to dominate childhood. EdTech designed on the same reward loop principles with unproven pedagogical values and poor privacy practices have been introduced, given free rein in classrooms right across the globe. A report from the Digital Futures for Children Centre into Google Classroom and Class Dojo, two companies ubiquitous in UK schools, found an infinite trail of children's data transferred from the classroom into the commercial world. These two companies are not outliers, they are norms. Data capture from school classrooms is an EdTech norm. It's sold to data intermediaries who pass it on infinitely and use pupil data to train AI chatbots. We've even found them giving it to gambling firms who then seek out children to target children with gambling advertisements. Meanwhile, University College London looked at the 25 most popular maths apps downloaded by UK parents for nursery-aged children. Half were found to have advertising. Only one had been peer-reviewed. Only eight followed pedagogical best practice of teaching, testing, reinforcing and retesting. Extraordinarily, 6 of the apps contained no maths at all. They were, in effect, games designed for data harvesting with no learning output at all being sold as EdTech. The glitter of the new and the promise of efficiency savings has seen billions of pounds, dollars, euros, pesos, and the rest piling into the EdTech sector that has yet to prove its learning outputs and is frequently little better than Victorian rote learning with slightly better graphics. Meanwhile, teachers are worried that children are missing out on the learning from watching others, failing to build collective understanding of a subject as they get isolated in the forest of headphones and screens. The lack of liability that tech has negotiated for itself in our society is now imposed into education settings, which have traditionally been a place of security and privacy, in which the state, not a commercial company, is in loco parentis. And I remind you that this is neither inevitable or necessary. Digital products and services are 100% engineered. They reflect the priorities of their makers and the rules of their use. There is every reason to welcome technology into our schools. How about twinning schools across continent by Zoom? How about enabling children to research projects using information that can be translated instantly into their native language? How about providing technical support for those with learning or physical disabilities to give them access to school, to the classroom? Or how about letting children build products that solve problems of the world? I recently saw 14-year-old girls who invented a product to translate sign language for a deaf member of their class, and a 15-year-old who had used AI to determine the perfect ripeness of a grape on his grandfather's farm, which has had the effect of upping the yield by 30%. The possibilities are infinite. None of the potential benefits would be diminished by imposing privacy standards, requiring proof of learning impact, introducing certification schemes, or imposing standards. We need to reorder the incentives of companies that are on an unfettered gold rush in education settings across the world. So let me turn finally to early years. Over the holiday period, I was sent an article from the New Yorker magazine entitled "How Cocomelon Captures Our Children's Attention." Cocomelon is one of the world's most successful animations, telling stories that cover everything from a visit to the dentist to learning about the number 7. It is streamed for billions of hours each year on Netflix and YouTube. Cocomelon's huge success is data-driven. Its editorial rules run to hundreds of pages. Its videos are tested on real children and repeatedly edited until the children are transfixed, not moving their eyes away from the screen. And what used to be in 15-minute segments is now 30 and go up to 60, 90, and some even more, with children who, after a session, are starting to show withdrawal symptoms when the screen is taken away. And important to remember that the target age for this product is between 12 and 24 months. There is decades of academic work that tracks child development and media, and it's often suggested that digital tech is simply the next iteration after radio and TV and so on. But two things make it different. First is this ability of large-scale testing so that hundreds of tiny incremental differences can be rapidly tested to see what creates the greatest stickiness, that is, the maximum attention for the longest amount of time. The other is that the device is both portable and personal. It can be in a pram, on a bus, in a cafe, on a play date, in a child's bedroom. So the child is both everywhere and completely alone with their phone. Reid Hoffman, Netflix CEO, famously said, "We don't have business competitors. Our competitor is sleep." He also said, the Netflix brand for TV shows is really all about binge watching, the ability to get hooked and watch episode after episode. This is deliberately designed, and arguably binge watching is bad for us all, but in a pre-verbal child, it's catastrophic. The problems associated with children whose development was interrupted by the pandemic as they were pushed onto tech is widely accepted as a time bomb of muted development. But these same habits have been normalized for the very young. Stories on tablets, nursery rhymes on YouTubes, games on phones. Early childhood is increasingly dominated by services that ruthlessly vie for their attention. And while there's much to say about how these activities impact on children, the real question is what they are not doing. They are not moving. They are not making eye contact. They are not learning social and emotional clues. They are not exploring the world around them. They are not on the necessary development journey that will take them from dependence to autonomy. I have spent more than a decade advocating that we build the digital world that children deserve. The digital world children deserve is not the highly stylized world of Cocomelon in which rounded children, soothed by lullabies, are seduced into a state of bliss so that the real world feels unfathomable and unfair. It is not a world in which corporate interests trump child development and overburdened parents and children are expected to fight one by one with global companies who profit from profits that create harm in their families and in their homes. The paradox of technology in the classroom is the same as the paradox of technology more broadly. If we do not demand that education technologies are designed to serve the pedagogical needs of teachers and the development needs of children, then we must not be surprised if they are developed to serve their own narrow commercial interest. If we do not demand that technologies respond to our collective duty of care for children, then we must not be surprised if tech continues to privatize the benefits and outsource the cost of their products onto the bodies, onto the minds, and onto the development of children. Digital technology is 100% engineered. It can be whatever we want it to be. So let's use it to build the digital world that children deserve. Thank you.